I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, this is CStar Presents. We're here with Jason Russell. You can know him from Kony 2012, Invisible Children, as well as a little radical, the book. And how you feeling today, Jason Russell? How's 2021 going for you so far?
2021 is a wild ride. It's been off to a unpredictable start, and I'm hopeful and excited. I think we can only get better from here. You
That's
know.
exactly what I was about to say. I feel like there's 2020 was probably one of the craziest weird. It definitely the weirdest year of my life, as well as I'm gonna assume most people in this call's life. But I think 2021 is nothing but opportunity ahead. Um, and I am tempted to ask, what's the future holding for you? But I wanna first start with like where you started at, and kind of get into some of your beginnings. I know like you were first into acting and theater and stuff like that. Um, I feel like that was what all your family and all them were involved with.
hmm
And then how did you make the switch into activism instead of acting?
Yeah, I was raised in a children's musical theater company that kind of spread throughout the nation, and it really shaped the way I saw the world, specifically around the idea of story and storytelling. So at a very young age, I was acting and dancing, the whole thing. I eventually decided that I liked directing better. I liked being in the theater and watching people react to something that I helped create or shape. And then I realized that the best way to do that was through film. If you're going to reach a lot of people, film has a way to convey to the masses like important issues or stories you want to tell. I never thought of myself as an activist growing up, and I never even, dreamed of making it kind of a career, if you want to call it that. But it was when we went to go make this documentary about these children running for their lives. I thought I would make one documentary and be done and do something else, but instead that movie morphed into an organization that I helped found, and was there for 12 years, called Invisible Children. It was amazing.
Did you have like when you were younger and growing up and like still involved with theater? Did you have a chance to travel a lot? And did you? Because I mean, the number one thing is people who don't travel a lot don't get exposed to like different ways of thinking and don't see other people's experiences of life. So did you have any of those experiences that like helped you to get to the mindset you had as you grew and eventually got to college and making the films, or did you more so were you just in California?
Yeah, I think that growing up, I did get to do some traveling. My family took us to Europe a few times when we were younger, and we live in San Diego, so we're actually a half hour from a different country, and we would go down to Mexico, and it's immediately just a different world, different challenges and language and food and everything. So it was kind of nice that we had the option growing up to just go to Mexico, and we still do as a family. But it wasn't until my first trip to Africa that really sparked this interest in more international travel. And so now, I definitely got hooked and wanted to explore and see what else was out there, because the world, you could travel it for the rest of your life and there would still be new things to see. And so I've been fortunate to have a career that has taken me all over the world, from the Middle East, all throughout Asia, Africa, and the United States. So I love traveling. I think that the best way for you to actually see your own country and your own community is to leave it, for a
Yeah,
season, because things become more clear and priorities start to shift.
because you can somewhat experience in a whole new way if you because by gaining new perspectives from other places, and then you can apply those to like your little hometown or wherever you're from.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's hard for a lot of like Americans, but it could be applied to any country. If you've never really left your country or your zip code, it's going to be very hard for you to empathize with someone that's other than you. And then if you get to go to the Middle East or anywhere else where it's not predominantly white, you get to experience what it's like to be a minority and also what it's like to be a guest in someone else's culture.
Yeah, and that's kind of unique. The U.S. is kind of unique in that sense because, well, I guess it's definitely majority white, but there are pockets over that are completely different than other places that are maybe a few hours away in the U.S. The U.S. has so many different cultures within it that again, like if in someone's small town, they have no idea they even exist. Um,
Hmm.
so like even leaving their small town, even moving a few hours away, could be a completely different world to a lot of people in the U.S. and that they only really see if they're not privileged enough to be able to leave what they're shown on the news or media.
Yeah, exactly.
Now as
See,
far
I
okay, go ahead, Sam.
I kind of see that as true, but in a sense, like unless you do travel outside of the country to like poor countries, you don't really get a good glimpse of like world poverty here in the United States because most of even cultural people that move here from around the world, you know, most of the time it is a upper class of the culture that gets to afford to move here. Most of the people that are like in deep poverty can't even,
Mm-hmm.
afford the dream of moving to here.
That's really true. I think that we took our kids around the world in 2018, and it was important for us to start in America. So we actually borrowed a friend's Airstream, and we decided to go to the poorest city in the poorest state in the union, and it happens to be in this small town called Welch, West Virginia. And I mean, when we were there, there's literally no jobs. It's like a ghost town, like an abandoned town, and the people who live there are barely surviving. It feels like a developing country. We went to this abandoned coal mine and explored it for hours. And we were trying to get some lunch, and there was only one place with one woman who basically had like a microwave and cooked us some hot dogs. Um,
Wow.
that was it, you know? So there is poverty in America. There is, I think that the difference is kind of the hand to mouth kind of poverty you would typically see in other places isn't so prevalent. But you're totally right in that if you get an education or if you get some kind of status in a developing country, then you have the opportunity perhaps to come to America. And they call that term the brain drain because it's taking the most intellectual individuals from the society and kind of cherry picking them to come to America and have a better life or get a better job.
Mm.
So it is something to be like recognized. And I do think that I have had privilege in being able to travel as much as I have.
So
Wait, I
what
have a
was
question.
your Shui, you can go ahead.
Go for it.
What's your personal opinion about the brain drain? Because I've actually read a couple articles about it. I know India is a really big victim of the brain drain. A lot of the smart people, they go to Silicon Valley, while the Indian tech industry kind of suffers from it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame anyone. I feel like if you want to succeed, like, you know, go all the way. Go,
Bless you.
excuse me, I just sneezed.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like I don't blame anyone for wanting to have a better life for themselves and their children. But I do think that it's important to, if you do decide to move to America or Europe or somewhere, to make sure that as you take on the new career in your life, that you stay connected to the roots and where you came from. And I think a lot of people organically do that and inadvertently like help their family because they have the privilege of being in America or some developed country.
So what was the first interest that really brought you to Uganda to find out about a lot of this stuff?
Yeah, so I was raised in a pretty like Christian environment community. So it was really like about helping the poor and pursuing justice. And so what I couldn't believe in film school, I remember hearing about this genocide that was happening in Sudan.
Mhm.
And I just couldn't wrap my head around how we continually talk about the 6 million Jews killed in the Holocaust every year, which we should. And like pretty much anyone who gets an education, you study that despicable, era. But then why is a current genocide happening right now, but we're not really talking about it, or we're not really trying to end it? So that's what I was most interested in, was to kind of document a undocumented genocide. And I know there are documentaries on Sudan and Darfur, but that was my initial interest, was like, where are the survivors of these families? 2 million people dead. That's a lot of people. And so that was our initial interest. And it just so happened that right below Sudan is the country Uganda. And we were going to northern Uganda to interview the Sudanese refugees who fled from the conflict. And on that trip is when the Lord's Resistance Army, the LRA, shot up a truck in front of us, and it blew up, and we had to go back to the town of Gulu. And that night is the first night we saw in person the night commuters who were sleeping in the streets, in hopes to save their life from being kidnapped, abducted, etc.
And then you gained footage there, and then eventually you came home, and that's when you started your nonprofit.
Yeah, so we got the initial footage and interviews in 2003. We made the film in 2004 and released it, and it just kind of took on a life of its own. Like, anybody who saw that first movie was inspired, moved, emotionally just upset, and wanted to help in any way that they can. And out of that desire, we started the nonprofit Invisible Children.
And Invisible, I want to talk a little bit about I guess the stuff people don't understand about, like, goes into like making a nonprofit. Like, what were some of the challenges, like, aside from just like the films and stuff like that you had to deal with when you first started the nonprofit?
What were the first ideals?
No, like, I guess like the first challenges, and the some of the early hurdles like that were involved. Like, I know, like, obviously getting to places and filming and being
Yeah.
involved with that is definitely a challenge. But I'm talking about like maybe like some of the like lesser known, less publicized things. Like, I know the film, everybody knows the films and stuff like that. But like, what were some challenges that you didn't like share with the public maybe? Like, what, like, you were also young, and like you were a young group of people and had to put together like this nonprofit to basically save lives almost. And what were some of the hurdles that you had to jump over for that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of hurdles because in some ways we were in uncharted territory. Like, we didn't know of another nonprofit that whose mission was to end a war, let alone end Africa's longest running conflict. So I think that the first initial steps was just getting people to believe in the vision, and like, because we were building the plane as it was flying, we I think the biggest through line throughout all of our work was trying to get this story out there to as many people as possible. And so when you think about like having to recruit interns for free, they actually paid us to come work for us, if you can imagine that. And then sustaining that momentum. I'll give you one example, is that we would have these events, that were international events where people could show up and have like a big rally. And in some of the cities, they were overnight events, like kids sleeping in the streets. We had to change the laws of the city in order to try and permit the city so that teenagers, kids, families could sleep outside in a peaceful protest, for this cause. So there were just so many uphill battles. We were always feeling like we had to keep growing the movement and growing the mission. And, you get to a point where you really have to sustain the resources, the funding, the donations. So that was like a constant challenge that was always on our minds. We also knew that, generally speaking, people don't want to sit down and watch a movie about children being kidnapped and forced into child soldier, and sex slaves. So we had to get creative and think, how do we get this movie in front of these young eyes and have them pay attention? And there's only two places in the world that you have a captive audience. One is prison, because they have to be there by law, and the other one is schools, because they have to be there by law. So we actually targeted, we did go to a few prisons, but we targeted high schools and colleges because, you know, you're going to get an hour of their time, and hopefully you can convert others to join the movement. And so just sustaining that was a ton of work. You know, it was constant, 24
And
hours. It
you're
felt like.
and you're like early mid 20s at this point, right? Like you guys are younger.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So I was 23. Bobby was 21, and Laren was 19 when we went
yeah.
on that first trip.
That's at a young age. That's a lot to deal with. And that's probably like a tons of organization, and then eventually like you talk about growing it constantly and getting media presence, and then eventually you got to the point with like Kony that I remember you saying like a TED talk or an interview that it was that the media presence was getting bad because you said people were trying to talk to you about how to make a viral video instead of trying to help the children and stuff like that. And I mean, that's just kind of insane to think about. That was probably like, was it one of the most viral videos ever?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's still the most viral movie ever. There's been other videos that have surpassed it in its growth, but they're basically music videos, like Justin Bieber, Taylor Swift, or something.
Was that the most surprising thing that came from just Kony? And I guess because you made around like 5 or so, maybe more films before Kony, and I mean all under the Invisible Children nonprofit, and they're all based in the same thing, trying to bring awareness to all everything that's happening in Uganda. But like, what was the most surprising part of the fame? Was it the people just trying to reach out to find out how you did it?
Yeah, I mean, it was such a phenomenon. Like, the snowball effect is something that you can't overemphasize. You know, it was at one point getting 1 million views every hour. So if you think about how many people are watching it, then sharing it, talking about it, I think if anything does go viral, by day 3 is when the backlash starts to really happen. And so I think that the backlash was actually surprising to me because I didn't understand what we did wrong or like what we are doing wrong. And the attacks were so personal, and there was a lot of untrue documentation on behalf of the media, which is like strange now because fake news is something that we've heard a lot about. But during that time, there wasn't a lot of press being released that was true in regards to Kony 2012 or Invisible Children. And I think that really hurt. It was pretty damaging because, again, we felt like what we were doing was right, and we didn't know what all the controversy was about.
Yeah, and I think honestly the bad media it got, by what I've read, they were saying that the movement itself led to a 92% reduction in LRA killings and 75% reduction in the core fighting force of the LRA. So honestly, I think to me the false media doesn't make any sense, because in reality your movement really did help, and they're making it kind of seem like it was a failure in media.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere where, like, Kony's forces dwindled to like 100 people or something like that.
Yeah. So when Kony 2012 was released, there were 5 commanders that were indicted by the International Criminal Court. And within a few months of 2012, all of them were removed from the battlefield. Either they were killed or they surrendered, and they're actually at the International Criminal Court right now. Dominic Ongwen is one of them who's on trial. And so in that way, it was really successful. On the other hand, we made the whole campaign and movie about Kony. And for whatever reason, he has been able to remain in power by being elusive and hiding out. He's made a career of doing that. So we Invisible Children today actually still exists, and the work is going, and all the work is really focused on getting children reunited with their families and bringing others back from the rebel army. I think we've rescued over 30 this year alone from the LRA, and we provide reintegration and therapy and try to give them a second chance at life.
Yeah, I know. I definitely I definitely this was I think over a year ago. I think in one of my classes last year, I read that the children when they are rescued, they're like way more politically active than children comparatively, and they all go on to do something involved with the with their town or community or something. They're all really involved. So I'm gonna attribute, like, I forget where what study this was part of, but I'm gonna say that Invisible Children's probably helping promote that as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Are
Mm-hmm.
you still involved, like, hands on with Invisible Children?
I actually was on the board from 2015 until about a few months ago. They have such a skilled board and brought in new leaders that are more experts in the work they're currently doing. And so, for me as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, um, I I was ready to let that go after 6 years of being on the board because the team is so solid. Kind of like watching your kid go to college.
Yeah, you built the ship, and now it can sail peacefully.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's crazy myself that I've heard that the LRA is actually a designated terrorist organization by definition of the U.S. government, and we seem to be so uh, involved in the Middle East and all these countries. It kind of shows the hypocrisy of the United States government in the sense that we are so involved in eliminating terrorist organizations in the Middle East, where we tend to get a lot of our oil and so on from. But something as horrible as the LRA is still ongoing. And by what I've heard, they've only sent, like, what was it, 100 something troops over there, I think in 2014.
Yeah, it was, I think, 2011, because when they did send the troops based off of bills we passed through Congress. So we should say that there's something hopeful about passing these bills through Congress, because it was the first time in United States history where we actually took this military option, but this part of the world had nothing to do with America. So it was really just going there for the humanitarian um, reason for justice. And they were there much longer than I thought. The reason we created Kony 2012 was to make Kony famous, only to ensure that the troops would stay in they're in Congo, Sudan. And so that was the point, that if people knew about Joseph Kony and his crimes, then that would create enough pressure on the US government to fulfill the mission. I have no idea why, with all of our sophistication and strength and money into the military industrial complex, how we couldn't successfully stop Kony. Like, that baffles my mind. I don't understand it.
Yeah, I agree.
But at the same time, people would argue, I think it took 10 years after 9/11 to actually stop Osama bin Laden. So, and they were really going for that. They wanted that. So, I don't know the answers or details. That's not my expertise, but I still wake up every day hoping that it'll be the day we find out that Kony's removed from the battlefield and has to face justice.
So what does the future hold for you? I think your book, A Little Radical, what was that, released a few years ago? And what are you currently working on?
So currently, I have my own creative agency called Broomstick Engine, and it's based on the story of the Wizard of Oz, where Dorothy has to get the broomstick back from the Wicked Witch of the West and bring it to Oz in order to go home to Kansas. So that's essentially what we do with our clients. We build stories, like a narrative, and we bake the call to action or whatever we want the viewer to do into the movie itself. So we've worked with some of the largest anti-slavery organizations, the largest clean water organization, Charity Water. So I basically moved from client to client, making films on different subjects all over the world. And yeah, I think what's next for me personally is I've been thinking about creating a website that teaches you through video how to make an inspiring movie that leads one to action. Because I haven't found anything like that online, and I think it would really help whether you're an independent filmmaker or even a professional to kind of learn the skills, tools, secrets that I've been developing over the past 20, 30 years.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Me and Sam were just talking before we got on here with you about like performative activism, kind of. It's like it's easy to get someone to like post something on like their Instagram or like something like that, but it's hard to get them to actually like go out and try and like be the change that that they post about on their social media. And I think Kony was a good representation of that, like of people actually going out and like and doing something. Is that what's like your goal of your films is pretty much going to be?
Yeah, so we at Invisible Children kind of had a gradient of opportunity for people to get involved. So if you just liked a video or forwarded it, that would probably be like a 1 on the scale. But if you bought a t-shirt or, even hosted a screening, that might be like a 5. If you wanted to intern with us for a season, that would be 7 to 8. If you wanted to go live in Uganda or Congo, that would be a 10 out of 10, right? Most people aren't going to get there. But no matter what you do on any portion of the scale shouldn't be judged. And I think that's the difference, is that the media and others saw the success of Kony 2012 and labeled it as clicktivism or slacktivism, when in fact, if you went behind the scenes, it's anything but that. We had work on the ground. We had the most sophisticated radio network in Central Africa. We had interviewed everyone you could ever think of on this subject. We had met with the President Obama twice in the Oval Office, passed bills through Congress, on and on. Invisible Children was anything but collectivism and slacktivism, and yet that's how people, like, they deem that what we did was just nothing, because it's just liking and forwarding. But my counter to that is, when people do like or share, that is a form of activism, because how are you going to know about something if no one shares it, right? So I don't know. It's kind of like a gripe that I have, in which I wish somebody would come out and explain like the scope of what we were doing, and not just this like moment in time.
Yeah, I definitely didn't get those vibes from Invisible Children. I mean, just taking a look at their website even today, I mean, they have so many different projects, and your project was kind of different than a lot of mainstream ones that are in America today. Like, a lot of them are focused on stuff here. Yours is focused on a whole nother continent. So I guess it's kind of harder for people to like see an impact when they don't live in the area. But even then, like, you guys made the film, like it's well documented, the meetings and like all the legislation that was passed.
Yeah,
I didn't really see many of those
too. Like, I think that because we got that question probably more than anything at screenings, like, why are you helping these kids over there when you should be helping kids here? And our answer to that was just, you can do both. You can actually help kids who are running for their lives, and at the same time, you can care about foster children here. You don't have to choose between the two, right? It's not binary. I also think it's worth saying that some of our like unintentional effect that we had on the youth of America, and I would say the world, because we had people in Australia and Mexico, Europe, who were involved, is that they were actually beginning their journey as activists. And there's something to be said about that work, right? About waking up and realizing you have power and realizing you can change something and giving you a voice. And so I think in years from now, the legacy of Invisible Children won't just be about the kids that we helped, you know, reconnect and reintegrate with their family and given an education and hopefully a job, but also all the youth who were involved in something much larger than themselves.
Yeah, because I mean, this is I mean, the internet's not young at the time of the release of the video, but the internet has definitely grown so much since then. Like the internet is changing so much every single year, and especially with like the recent political campaigns and like Trump and then Obama. Like between those two eras, like we saw the power of the internet. And that's right where your Kony 2012 was released in 2012, and that's right where the internet's influence is starting to really be recognized. And again, I think that's like why there's such a focus on how did you make this film go so crazy and go everywhere. And I think that's why there's such a focus on it, because like people are still trying to understand how the internet really works and what makes things go.
Yeah. I think there was a statistic that said something like 7 out of 10 international trending tweet topics was about Kony 2012 for 10 plus days. Like we dominated Twitter for 10 days. It was all about this one warlord that most people had never heard of before. But I also think in terms of having it go viral, it was like 9 years in the making. Invisible Children had produced 10 movies before Kony 2012. And for me, it was kind of this real push to say, I'm going to pour everything into this. Let's be hyper focused on making Kony famous. And we did have goals and we crushed through all of them. But because we had been to 15,000 places, churches, mosques, prisons, schools, for 10 years, we had built a community of 5 million face-to-face activists that didn't just like us because it was a brand or because of video. They felt like they were a part of the movement. And they were, because we would call on them and say, hey, can you show up at this office? Can you sleep outside? Can you make this? Can you do that? And it was so super high network. And I don't think most nonprofits have a base of 5 million people committed to doing whatever it takes.
Definitely not. Definitely not. And that definitely explains at least part of part of what made it explode.
Then you have to have a great movie. You have to have a stellar website. You have to have all the things that we did. But that was one. It was almost like the wood was there for burning, and Kony 2012 like threw a match on the wood, and it just took off.
Whoever
like the wood ready.
Yeah, whoever made the elephant and the donkey form into that dove, they deserve an award, because that is one of the that is one of the coolest design ideas I've ever seen.
I'll tell Steve. He's the one who did it.
Yeah, tell him I thank him for that personally. That was great. But so the Broomstick Engine, is that more focused on like political films, or is it really gonna go anywhere? Is it too young still to really know?
Well, no, I've been doing it now for 6 years.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I have had so many clients, and it's basically just doing like what I learned at Invisible Children, and the way I approach powerful stories is what I offer to my clients. So, for example, one of my clients is Charity Water, and they wanted a Kony 2012 style movie that would last for years. And so that was 4 years ago we made it, and they have tens of millions of views and have brought in a ton of money for clean water in the world. So that's really, I just am a filmmaker for anyone who wants a piece of media that will bring in a steady stream of revenue for your mission.
And then you also said you're going to start making a series, or at least produce a series or a film.
I'm dreaming about it. Yeah, I think that, I think it would be helpful, because sometimes I forget how much I've learned and how it can be applied to telling a powerful story. And like you said with the internet, the ones who tell the best stories win, no matter what. So if you're in the business of not just wanting to go viral, but wanting to make a powerful movie for your product, for a politician, for whatever. It could even be just your own family home video, but you want it to be really good. Then I'm going to teach you the tips and tricks on what it takes to piece that together, hoping that it'll create even better storytellers.
Oh, can I say something?
For sure.
No, no, you
Sorry,
cannot.
no. Sorry if I haven't contributed that much because this interview was on short notice. But like to get to more of it, since Nico was talking about the design of the shirt, I like to get into more of the technicals. So I've noticed that you're a filmmaker, and I watched Kony 12, and I think I watched some of your other videos, and I really like the cinematography that you guys did. And I've noticed ever since Kony 2012 came out that other videos that promoted activism, especially Vice, I wouldn't say they copied, but they've used a lot of the aspects of your cinematography into their own videos. Try to get some more like what can I say, like
I,
the feelings. If you know what I'm talking about.
that film is like such a culture staple.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Its influence
yeah.
reaches like places that you might not even know, Jason. So it's all over the world.
Yeah, because before Kony 2012, there was nothing else like it. Then after 2012, a lot of other videos that were talking about issues around the world, like like the ice caps melting or whatever. They've been using like your same style of like cinematography and like kind of B-roll shots of like the government buildings and stuff like that. And I noticed it and yeah.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for saying that. I think that the reason why it became that is because people forget, but the three of us were filmmakers, aspiring filmmakers. I had just finished college, sold a story idea to Steven Spielberg at DreamWorks. So I was excited to go into feature films in Hollywood, but instead we made this movie. So everything we did moving forward was centered around the media. We would really emphasize that, and I would say most nonprofits, they don't think about it in terms of telling a story or making a movie, although they should do that first and foremost, because if they care about donations, people joining the cause, you have to tell the story well. So you should spend money on powerful media. Now, we didn't spend a ton of money on media if you relate it to Hollywood or TV shows or even independent films. But we did spend money on media because we knew whatever money we spent, we were going to get a return on our investment. And it was going to clarify the mission and keep everyone like locked in synchronicity around our events or around a bill passed through Congress or whatever the mission might look like. And so, you know, most nonprofits, and this is a generalization, but I think it's true, don't prioritize their brand or their storytelling or their logo or their fonts or their cinematography. They just think of it as an afterthought, where we felt like we were competing as a nonprofit. We were competing with Marvel and video games and social media and Apple and whoever else. We wanted our products and our storytelling to be on a tier that is only reserved for corporate America.
Oh, I'm so sorry, but I have to go now.
Oh, no
I'm really
problem.
sorry about it.
Thanks, man.
Let me know how the interview goes, right, Nico?
Yeah,
And
I'll let you know, Shui.
And I really appreciate your work in your nonprofit,
For sure.
Mr. Russell.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, I have about 5 minutes left too. I have another call.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think what you just said might have been the my favorite part so far is just getting connecting to nonprofits and getting them to realize it's a brand, and especially in today's market where like people with attention span and the media is 24-hour news cycle. Like there's always something they're trying to push. There's so much competition in the news and all this stuff. Like getting that brand to actually like stick with people.
And it was a few years ago, but this guy Nicholas Kristof at the New York Times, who's super respected, he said we actually spend more money advertising for paper towels than we do on some of the biggest issues facing humanity.
Wow.
Because there's so many people die of dirty water. It's a solvable issue. It only takes money, right? there's things like that where if you don't spend the money advertising and make it emotional and logical and compelling, why would anyone get involved? And yet we all get these flashy, expensive ads for the new phone every year, and they're spending billions of dollars trying to pump that into our like cultural, you know, consumer mindset that unfortunately the bottom billion, 2 billion, 3 billion people don't get their story told because it's not flashy, it's not sexy, it's not captivating.
So Jason, do you have any advice? So say somebody, a young person would want to get into activism and try to spread the word like you did. Do you have any advice for young people out there who are interested in doing what you did?
Yeah, I would just say jump first, fear later. Like get involved, that which it's right in front of you. You can always choose a different cause or a different path, but I think it's really important. I don't really like this term, but like to get your hands dirty, to get on the ground, like to actually like, and there's so many problems to solve, right? Like that's what's exciting is like, will we live to see a day in which like these 1.6 billion people have a home to live in, so they're not living in a shack or a cardboard box? Will we see the day where everyone on Earth has clean water? Will we see a day where the 35 to 40 million people who are actually enslaved as they speak, will they be set free? And will we be able to be a part of that mission? To me, that's super exciting. I know that the statistics and stories are depressing, but to me, I've seen so much change. And I think with a generation led by Greta Thunberg or others, she didn't wait. She didn't. I don't know if she had fear, but she just sat there with her sign day after day and changed the world because she knew in her gut that it was right. And so I think my advice would be, what is it in your heart that really moves you, that excites you? Because that's the thing that I woke up every day with at Invisible Children, was just like, it wasn't work. It was just, there were hard times. I'm not saying that. You're going to have challenges and setbacks and failures. But I think that it was the deepest core heartbeat to do everything I could to help Jacob and the other children I met. And once you have a relationship with the issue and you know that there's a face and a name on the other side, you never give up on that. You never give up on them. And yeah, it's cool. We just got to visit Jacob a couple years ago. He named his daughter after Danica, my wife. So it's just like a super close relationship that has taken us to many beautiful places.
That's great, and I would like to deeply thank you for giving us your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Let me know when you post it.
I definitely will. And we're definitely looking forward to that series of yours starting up soon.
Okay,
sure.
thanks, man.
Have a nice day, man.
Appreciate it. Keep going. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Bye.